Hi, kids. It's Dan Peña again, and this is episode 7 of the Godfather series. We're going to cover a number of different things, but most of these things that I will cover today are based on questions that I've gotten, some over the years and some over the last few months, but repetition. They keep asking the same questions, and even though some of the answers are on my website, and even though you all lie to me and tell me you covered everything on my fucking website, I know that's a lie, okay? I've covered this during the seminar. In fact, this last seminar ended a few days ago. And I don't call them my 4 secrets. They've been printed or published by taking things out of, not necessarily context, but out of different things that I've filmed over the years. And they've narrowed them down to 4, and I would not disagree with this. I, above almost all people, and I mentioned it and I beat it to death in the seminar, I'm interested in the how of things, not the why. Even when I was a young man, I didn't ask why, I just asked how. And I always addressed both negative and positive situations in the same manner. You know, how do I get this done? Not why or if I should get it done. And number 2, I always wanted to be effective versus being liked. Some very polished mentees, some of which are in the Hall of Fame, still want to be liked. That's based on self-esteem, self-confidence, self-worth, and all the things that I beat the shit out of. But I've never worried about that. I've never worried about the what I say doesn't make a difference in what people feel about me or think about me. I think most of all, vis-a-vis today, the snowflake generation, I was taught that sticks and stones can break your bones, but words can never hurt you. Now it's just flipped. Now very few people get hit by sticks and stones. Very few people get in physical altercations, but a lot of people are hurt by the words that are said to them either on WhatsApp or the various other social media, especially Facebook. That's one of the primary differences between the current generation and generation and a half, maybe the last 20, 30 years, and my generation. And last but not least, for the 4th, if you want to call my 4 secrets, is I always realized that fear, F-E-A-R, was false expectations appearing real. I never worried about, everybody that's listening to this will say, oh, hell, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Or it wasn't as tough as I thought it was going to be. And we can imagine and dream up some pretty horrific outcomes when it's in no way that bad. My favorite example I like to use now is Josh Kim, the teenage phenom, said when he came back to celebrate his 21st birthday, after 3.5 years of being out in the QLA world, he said, 95% of the things that I worried about, thought about, never happened. And I think that that's pretty good advice. Somebody asked me, they had either heard or read something about, now you know that I ran in the Boston Marathon, you know that my first marathon was 3 hours. But after that, on my 38th birthday, we decided to give myself a surprise birthday party. And I called a few guys, namely my kid brother, who was I think he might have been a paramedic at the time, and is early in his 40-year career as with the Los Angeles County Fire Department. And we decided to run 38 miles on my 38th birthday. So we took off from my house in Palos Verdes, and we drove to somewhere in we ran to somewhere in Santa Monica, turned around and came back. It was my 38th birthday. Derek, our youngest son, was about born 4 days before on the 6th of August. And and I've done a lot of crazy shit. We started out with about 24, if I remember, young guys, all really fit. The only one that finished with me was my kid brother, 38 miles in the wee hours of the morning. At one time, I was a pretty good long-distance runner, and I only found out after, in my early 30s, that I really had talent because I didn't have hardly any fast-twitch muscles. Some people say I had no fast-twitch muscles, and all I had was slow-twitch muscles, which are perfect for long-distance running. Another thing that I did on my birthday, and my birthday, my 76th birthday is coming up in a few days, is that I played 72 holes of golf in one day. Now, it's not too hard to play 72 holes of golf here in Scotland because the sun's up from about 3:30-ish to about 11:30 or 12-ish during the summer. But I played 72 holes of golf in Hawaii, where I spent my birthday, and it would have been about 1984 or 5, and I did it in Hawaii, and I teed off as the first sun came up, and I putted out my 72nd hole as the sun went down. And for those of you that are wondering, 3 rounds, one round I shot low 70s, 2 rounds I shot in the middle 70s, and 1 round I shot 79. I had to sink about a 15-foot putt to break 80. I was getting tired, I imagine. But it was one of the crazy things I've done on my birthday. Another thing I did on a birthday before that, my chauffeur at the time was a guy named Rich Williams, and he was a class racquetball player, and I could never beat him. And so I decided that we were going to play racquetball till I beat him. And one of my friends, B.J. Lahoff, had his own racquetball court in his backyard that he had built. And so we played. Now, some people that would witness this say that Rich let me win the 100th game. I don't believe he could let me win the 50th game. But on the 100th game that we played, I beat him in racquetball, and it's probably the best racquetball I've ever played. Along the same lines, some people have asked me, did I really run a 100-mile race? And the answer is yes. And it was an indoor track on the LA Athletic Club. And part of the stigma or the genre or the dogma of being a long-distance runner was to run 100 miles and piss blood because your body starts breaking down at about 65 or 70 miles. And I did run 100 miles in about 23 hours and 15 minutes, as I recall. And I did piss blood. I've also run in 2 or 3 50-mile races. And so this is one time during my long career where I worked less for a couple of years, and I got in real good shape to run. Another time, I took a couple of years where I worked less, and I got to be a fairly substantial power lifter. Speaking of the power lift, I've been asked, had I ever bench pressed 400 pounds? The answer is no. I bench pressed 395 pounds, and I've been asked many times by you meatheads, well, why didn't you bench press 400 pounds, Mr. Peña? Well, the meatheads that were spotting me forgot to put the fucking collars on. So, and I've never come close to 395 again. I think the best I ever did after that was about 380, and then 360, then 320, then 300. And as I got older and I don't work out as much, it went down. But I consider myself in my heart a 400-pound bench presser. Another thing I did on my birthday, actually it was on a birthday gift. I was given a 3-week safari to Africa. And it was at the same time my daughter was being born. And those of you that have seen my Dambo on YouTube, which not many people like it because I killed a lot of animals. One of the things we didn't film was I killed about an 18-foot croc, and they call them flat dogs in Africa. And and everything we killed, we ate, or we gave it to the natives to eat. So we're taking pictures, and when you go into camp, you unload your weapons. So my big rifle, at that time I shot it with a rifle, I sat on the croc's just behind its head. Now the crocodile's brain is about as big as a walnut. And even though I'd hit it in the head and messed up its skull, I apparently didn't, only stunned it. So while I'm sitting on it, it moved its tail. And all the natives running like, scared cats, myself included. And most of the trees in our campsite weren't big enough or strong enough to hold me up. They could hold a little 100, 120-pound tracker up, but we ultimately did kill it, but it came very close to biting me, but didn't. The one thing that I believe, and I'm not a believer in politically correct culture, you know that. And I think it's the ultimate demise of the human race. And I said that quite clearly in the seminar that just ended a few days ago. But the one thing that we haven't gotten into yet, or at least I haven't seen, the real wuss, politically correct, soft, non-confrontational, back in the 60s, the hippie era, used to called the jelly roll. Now, you see people hug each other, and you see people kiss each other on the cheek. Now, that is the demise of that has gone along with Corona. But back in the 60s, late 60s and early 70s, they had a thing called jelly roll, where 2 or 3 people would hug each other, and then 5 or 6, and 8 or 10, then 15 or 20, then 30 or 40, and you would all squeeze yourselves together. And it was called a jelly roll. I predict, especially since Corona has subsided a little bit, hopefully, although I expect another wave, as I predicted back in March 2020, that the next step of non-confrontational contact will be jelly rolls, where you go up and 4 or 5 or 6 of you that are just getting together, let's say to have a meeting, if you do come into the office, or you have a meeting someplace else, you're going to jelly roll. So just as I predicted the black swan, which isn't here yet, just as I predicted negative oil, which has been here, just as I predicted the last big fall in Bitcoin, I predict that we're moving rapidly towards jelly rolling. A couple of years ago, we had a very bright PhD, and I'm going to tell her ethnicity because it's important here. She was black. She was a black PhD, and she was a college professor. And she had some very strong feelings about the way the world was going, i.e., that we were getting more kinder, gentler, and that we were very forgiving of a lot of things. And the people that were in the hardcore seminar, of which we just had one here at the last seminar, were being confrontational to her in that because they were snowflakes, that she didn't know what she was talking about, notwithstanding she had a PhD in psychology from a very, very fine university. And she got not violent, but pretty agitated about it. And so they kept saying, well, how do you know? What the fuck do you know? You're just an academic PhD. But she was an academic PhD, attractive woman, about 50 at the time. And she said, words to the effect, mixed with expletives, they didn't know what the fuck they were talking about. And no matter how much therapy one has, it doesn't make up for things like child abuse. It can't overcome child abuse. No matter how much therapy you have, when you've been raped, and she was referring to women being raped, although men do get raped, it never goes away. It's always in your subconscious. When you see a movie, when you hear a word, when kids have been abused by their parents, sexually or physically, you think of that abuse. And they kept pressing the button, her buttons, as Sally would say. And then finally she came out and told her story, and I'm paraphrasing it. Her mother sold her to Idi Amin when she was 10 years old. Idi Amin was a ruler in Africa, a violent guy, killed, raped, pillaged, a lot of things. And when she was 12 or 13, as I recall, Idi Amin gave her or sold her back to her mother because her private parts had been stretched to where it didn't feel the same when she was molesting a 8 or 10-year-old. And of course, the rest of the class, felt awful. And she said, no matter how much therapy, and that's one of the reasons she became a therapist, no matter how much therapy I have, I can never forget that. No matter what kind of relationship I have with a nice man, I can never forget that. And it's always stuck with me. And many women that come here, and men, have been sexually abused. Now, this isn't a sales pitch for the sexually abused to come to the seminar. But so I've questioned them because they fill out a lot of paperwork, and the people that say that they've been abused, we talk about it in our one-on-one time. And her comment about you never forget is very, very true. And of course, they have a lot of helplines now, and they have a lot of ways that you can help yourself if you get in a bad spot. Now, I've never been in a bad spot like that, although I've been physically abused by current standards. My poor dad, even though I loved him to death, would have probably gone to jail for at least one or two of the beatings he gave me. And I've always taken away, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me. And although my dad didn't break any of my bones, he broke me of almost all my bad habits. Now, I said at the seminar that just ended, spare the rod, spoil the child. Meaning those of you that have not disciplined your children strictly, not necessarily beating them, but I mean with some sort of physical punishment, spanking kids or whatever, you're going to pay the price down the road. I asked the question in the beginning of the seminar, how many of you have ever been yelled at? How many of you have ever been physically hit by your parents? How many this, how many that? And almost all the kids in the class don't respond because they haven't. There's 3 or 4 of the kids that were raised like I was, spare the rod, spoil the child. And so I always remember this black PhD. I hope you see this, dear, that you will not be all you can be unless you're pressed. And part of that pressing is, being disciplined. I'm not promoting physical abuse. I'm not obviously promoting sexual abuse. But I think kids that aren't disciplined pay a very, very serious price to action that they will rue the fucking day as they get older.